Spaces between us. The first time Marcus saw Ellie, she was standing beneath the sprawling oak tree in Franklin Park, her pale fingers tracing the pages of a worn copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God. Something about the way she stood there, completely absorbed in the world of words, made him pause his morning run. He wasn't the type to approach strangers, especially not white girls with wild strawberry blonde hair who looked like they belonged on indie album covers, but something pulled him toward her that day. "Good book?" he asked, immediately regretting the interruption when she startled, nearly dropping her novel. Her eyes, a startling shade of green, widened momentarily before she smiled. "One of my favorites, actually. Have you read it?" "3 times," Marcus admitted, surprised by his own candor. "Wrote my senior thesis on Hurston's use of dialect as resistance." "English major?" she asked, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Was. Now I'm in my 2nd year of law school. Columbia? New York University." Her smile widened. "I'm at Columbia. Art history." That was how it began, a chance encounter between 2 graduate students in a New York City park on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday in September. Neither of them could have known then how their lives would intertwine, how the spaces between them, the differences in their backgrounds, their skin, their experiences, would both challenge and strengthen what was growing between them. Their first official date was at a tiny Ethiopian restaurant in Harlem that Marcus loved. He watched Ellie tentatively tear pieces of injera, scooping up spicy lentils with careful precision. "My roommate Ayana brought me here during my first week in the city," Marcus explained. "Best food I've found that reminds me a little of my grandmother's cooking. Not the same cuisine, obviously, but something about the spices." "It's delicious," Ellie said, and meant it. "I grew up on bland casseroles in suburban Wisconsin. This is—" she searched for the right word. "An awakening." Marcus laughed. "An awakening, huh? Well, we're just getting started." Later, walking back to her apartment in Morningside Heights, their hands brushed against each other. Once, twice, before Marcus finally laced his fingers through hers. Her hand was smaller than his, softer. He wondered if she could feel his heart pounding through his palm. "This is me," she said, stopping in front of a pre-war building with ornate stonework around the entrance. "Thanks for dinner." "Thanks for the company," he replied. Under the yellow glow of streetlights, Marcus leaned down and Ellie rose to her tiptoes. Their first kiss tasted like Berber spice and possibility. 3 months into dating, Marcus took Ellie home to meet his family in Bedford-Stuyvesant. The apartment where he'd grown up was filled with the scent of his mother's famous jerk chicken and the sound of his younger sisters arguing over control of the music. "Mom, this is Ellie," Marcus said, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. Diane Johnson studied the pale girl standing in her living room, noting the nervous way she clutched her purse strap and the sincere smile that reached her eyes. "Nice to meet you, Ellie. Marcus has told us a lot about you." "All good things, I hope," Ellie replied, offering the bouquet of lilies she'd insisted on bringing. "Most of them," Diane said with a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Later, after Marcus's sisters had warmed to Ellie, especially after discovering her talent for braiding hair, learned from years of summer camp counseling, Diane cornered her son in the kitchen. "She seems sweet," she said, stirring the collard greens. "But?" Marcus asked, recognizing the hesitation in his mother's voice. "But nothing. Just, be careful, baby. The world isn't always kind to people who look different standing side by side." Marcus glanced into the living room where Ellie was laughing at something his youngest sister had said. "We know that, Mom." "Do you?" Diane looked at her son, at the determined set of his jaw that reminded her so much of his father. Because knowing it intellectually and living it every day are 2 different things. The first time happened 4 months in. They were leaving a movie theater in Greenwich Village, still discussing the film's ambiguous ending, when a middle-aged white couple passed them. The woman's eyes narrowed at their intertwined hands, and she pulled her husband closer to her, crossing to the other side of the street. Ellie felt Marcus stiffen beside her. "Did they just—" "Yeah," he said flatly. "They did." "I'm sorry," she whispered, squeezing his hand. Marcus shook his head. "Don't apologize for them." That night, lying in her bed, the city lights casting patterns across her ceiling, Ellie asked the question that had been weighing on her. "Does it happen often? People looking at you that way?" Marcus was quiet for so long she thought he might have fallen asleep. Then he said, "Not always so obvious. Sometimes it's subtle, the way a waiter seats us at the back of a restaurant, or how security follows me in stores even when I'm wearing a suit. Sometimes it's the assumptions that I'm an athlete, not a law student, that I grew up in a broken home, not with two parents who've been married for 30 years. Ellie propped herself up on one elbow. "And with me?" "With you." He traced the curve of her cheek with his finger. "With you, it's the looks, the questions in their eyes. What are they doing together? Is it serious? Or is it just, you know?" She did know. She'd seen those looks too, felt the weight of unspoken judgment. "I hate that." "Me too," he said, pulling her closer. "But not enough to stop loving you." It was the first time either of them had used that word. It hung in the air between them, fragile and enormous. "I love you too," she whispered against his chest, feeling his heart beat steadily beneath her cheek. Meeting Ellie's family was different. The drive to Whitefish Bay, Wisconsin felt like traveling to another planet. Sprawling houses set back from perfectly manicured lawns, American flags on porches, SUVs in driveways. "You grew up here?" Marcus asked as they pulled into her parents' circular driveway. "Don't hold it against me," Ellie attempted a joke, but her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Richard and Margaret Walsh were polite, too polite, in the way that suggested rehearsed tolerance rather than genuine acceptance. They asked about his studies, nodded approvingly when he mentioned his summer internship at a prestigious civil rights law firm. But there was a distance, a carefulness to their interactions that made Marcus feel like an exhibit in a museum, observed from behind invisible barriers. That night, in Ellie's childhood bedroom, where she'd been pointedly assigned to sleep alone, with Marcus in the guest room, she apologized through tears. "They're trying," she insisted. "They're just from a different generation." "I know," Marcus said, though he wasn't entirely sure he did. His own parents had expressed concerns, yes, but they had welcomed Ellie with open arms, inviting her to Sunday dinners and birthday celebrations. The contrast was stark and painful. "They'll come around," Ellie promised. "They just need time." Marcus wondered how much time it would take for people to see beyond the colors of their skin, to see them simply as two people in love. He didn't say this aloud, though. Instead, he held her until her tears subsided, then quietly returned to the guest room before dawn. The law library at New York University became their neutral territory. Ellie would bring her art history texts, Marcus his constitutional law casebooks, and they would study side by side in comfortable silence. It was there, surrounded by the smell of old books and the soft scratching of pencils on paper, that they built their foundation. "Have you thought about where you'll apply for jobs after graduation?" Ellie asked one evening as they were packing up. Her program would finish 6 months before his law degree. "Big civil rights firms mostly. Maybe the ACLU if I'm feeling optimistic," Marcus replied. "You?" "The Met has an opening in their education department. I'm applying next week." "So we're both staying in New York?" "Looks that way." She smiled, relief evident in her expression. Marcus pulled her into the stacks, between shelves of dusty legal journals that no one had touched in years, and kissed her deeply. Good. I wasn't looking forward to a long-distance relationship. Me neither, she whispered against his lips, though I'd have followed you anywhere. Summer arrived with sweltering heat that turned the city into a concrete oven. They escaped one weekend to a small beach town on Long Island where Ellie's roommate's family had a cottage. For 2 days, they swam in the Atlantic, built sandcastles like children, and ate ice cream that melted too quickly down their wrists. On their last evening, walking along the shore as the sun set, Ellie stopped suddenly. Do you ever wonder what our children would look like? The question caught Marcus off guard. They had been together nearly a year, but they hadn't discussed children or marriage, at least not directly. Sometimes, he admitted, they'd be beautiful, smart. With your eyes, Ellie said, and maybe my freckles. Definitely your freckles. He touched one on the bridge of her nose. But the world, she trailed off, would be complicated for them, Marcus finished her thought, but also better, maybe, than it is now. And they'd have us. Ellie nodded, a sudden determination in her face. Yes, they would. They stood there as darkness fell, imagining a future neither could fully see, but both wanted desperately to believe in. One, the argument that almost ended them came after a gallery opening in Chelsea. One of Ellie's professors had invited her, and she'd brought Marcus as her +1. They were standing in front of an abstract canvas, sipping mediocre white wine from plastic cups, when an older man approached them. Eleanor, so glad you could make it. He kissed her cheeks in that artificial European way. And who is your friend? This is Marcus Johnson, my boyfriend, Ellie said, a note of pride in her voice. Marcus, this is Professor Harrington. The professor's eyebrows rose slightly. Ah, the law student. How interesting. The way he said interesting made it clear he meant something else entirely. What's interesting about it? Marcus asked, his voice deceptively calm. Oh, just that Eleanor has always had such specific tastes in art, in literature. I wouldn't have expected her to be drawn to someone so different from her usual circles. Ellie's face flushed. Marcus is one of the most brilliant people I know, Professor. He's going to be an incredible civil rights attorney. Of course, the professor backpedaled unconvincingly. We certainly need more of those, don't we? Well, enjoy the exhibition. After he walked away, an uncomfortable silence fell between them. Marcus set his wine down untouched. I want to leave, he said quietly. Marcus. Now, Ellie? Outside, the argument erupted like a summer thunderstorm, sudden and violent. That's what they think, Marcus said, pacing the sidewalk. That's what they all think. That I'm some kind of exotic experiment for you. That you're slumming it with me because it's edgy or rebellious. That's not fair, Ellie cried. You know that's not how I see you. But it's how they see us, and you just smile and nod and let them. What was I supposed to do? Make a scene? You could have defended me more forcefully. You could have told him off. He's my professor. He's writing my recommendation letters. And that's more important than standing up for us? Marcus stopped pacing, staring at her in disbelief. For me? Tears spilled down Ellie's cheeks. That's not fair, and you know it. I love you. I've never loved anyone the way I love you. Sometimes love isn't enough, Ellie. He walked away then, leaving her standing on the sidewalk, mascara running down her face. For 3 days, they didn't speak, the longest they'd gone without communication since they'd met. It was Diane Johnson who finally intervened. She called Ellie directly, inviting her for coffee at a small shop near her workplace. He's miserable, Diane said after they'd exchanged pleasantries. And I'm guessing you are too. Ellie nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Love between people like you and Marcus. It requires more work than other kinds of love, Diane said, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. More patience, more understanding, more forgiveness. I don't know how to make him see that I'm committed to this, to us, for the long haul, Ellie admitted. That professor was awful, and I should have said something stronger in the moment. But Marcus thinks I'm ashamed of him, and I'm not. I could never be. Then show him, Diane said simply. Words are easy. Actions matter more. That evening, Ellie showed up at Marcus's apartment unannounced. When he opened the door, she handed him a small wrapped package before he could speak. "What's this?" he asked, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "Open it." Inside was a first edition of James Baldwin's If Beale Street Could Talk. Marcus looked up in surprise. "Your thesis advisor mentioned it was your favorite book," Ellie explained. "And I thought, it's a love story, about two people fighting to be together against all odds." "Ellie, I'm not done," she interrupted. "I withdrew from Professor Harrington's seminar this morning. I told him exactly why. I also accepted the job at the Met, which starts in 3 months. And I found an apartment we can afford together in Fort Greene if you still want that." Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "I'm sorry I walked away. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for us the way I should have," she whispered back. That night, they made promises to each other that went beyond words. Promises to fight for their love, to face the world together, to build a life in the spaces between their differences. Their wedding was small, just family and close friends, gathered in the community garden where they'd had their third date. Ellie's parents came, still uncomfortable but trying harder now. Her father even shook Marcus's hand and managed a genuine smile when they exchanged vows. Marcus's younger sisters served as bridesmaids, having adopted Ellie as one of their own over the past 2 years. His mother read a poem by Maya Angelou. Ellie's roommate played violin as they walked down the makeshift aisle between rows of summer blooms. They wrote their own vows, promises that acknowledged both the joy and the challenges of their union. "I promise to stand beside you," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "To face whatever comes our way with courage and honesty. To listen when you speak, to hear what you're really saying. To love you not despite our differences, but including them, because they are part of what makes us who we are together." "I promise to be your partner in all things," Ellie responded, tears flowing freely now. "To fight for our love every day. To never take for granted the gift we've given each other. To build with you a home where both of us can fully belong, and to create together a world where love like ours is simply called love, without qualifiers or explanations." As the sun set over the garden, casting golden light across their joined hands, they sealed their promises with a kiss. Around them, their two worlds, once separate, applauded as one. 5 years later, Marcus stood in the doorway of their Brooklyn brownstone second bedroom, watching as Ellie sang softly to their daughter. Zora, named for the author whose book had brought them together, had her father's deep brown eyes and her mother's wild curls, a perfect blend of both of them. "She finally asleep," he whispered. Ellie nodded, carefully laying the toddler in her crib. They tiptoed out, leaving the door slightly ajar. In their small living room, degrees framed on the walls alongside Ellie's artwork and photographs from their life together, Marcus pulled his wife into his arms. "Happy anniversary," he murmured against her hair, now shorter than when they'd met, but still the same fiery color he loved. 5 years, she said with wonder. "Sometimes it feels like we just met under that oak tree. Sometimes it feels like I've known you forever." They swayed together to music only they could hear, in the home they had built in the space between their separate worlds, a new world of their own making. Outside, the city hummed with its endless rhythms. Inside, in the quiet of their shared life, there was only this: two people who had chosen each other, day after day, across all the spaces between them, creating something beautiful and new from the best parts of who they were. And that, they both knew, was the greatest love story of all.